It's calm and quiet. It's a dark sky reserve actually, the Brecon Beacons, but we grew up with that. It's very clean air. There's a feeling of great freedom here. And I came to it as a farmer's child, so it was the rhythm of the seasons, which are very powerful of course, and the rhythm of the farming year and the livestock markets which still go, and the harvest. It's a wry, witty, storytelling kind of place. A complete heaven for a child, still. In the decades that I've known it, it's changed, but in good and interesting ways. It's a very friendly, approachable place. I see it because life has taken me away, also through the eyes of an incomer every time I return, and I'm a travel writer. And on that level, it's an absolute gift, because it's full of stories, mischief, absurdity, and a sort of playful sense, I think, of the passing time.
First of all, I thought it would be just wonderful to have a sense of community in a place. There is already a wonderful community here because of course there's just a natural community with the cathedral and also the theatre. And also there's the famous jazz festival that always happens in the summer. So we thought, gosh, maybe we can kind of create something for a Baroque festival as well. And it really has happened that way. So we have people who come regularly every year. We have people coming from the States and Australia every year who combine it with a holiday in the UK. And we always throw a party for them as well, so that they get to know each other and they get to know the musicians who return. We always have a kind of young artist slot as well, so we're kind of fostering new talent. And then the last concert is always a kind of big jamboree of pros and students of mine and of the others, and ex-students, and also some local amateurs and my daughters, for instance, who come and join. And so it's a very kind of joyful event, the last concert. So I think that really epitomizes the festival, just really making the most of making music together.
We're a very rich festival area, obviously, so the Hay Festival started in one tent and is now an international freewheeling magnet, really, for writers and thinkers and performers around the world. And things like Brecon Jazz and then the Baroque Festival fit very naturally here. You always came to pockets, so obviously there's the Royal Welsh Show at Bilth Wells, but there's the Wyeside Arts Centre there, which was absolutely rich all my life, and the little Coliseum in Brecon was where you came to see, what Hollywood had made from Star Wars or Indiana Jones. It was a proper little classical, beautiful flea pit. So the Baroque Festival fits in beautifully, and of course we have got layers and layers of society here, from people who have always gone to church, to the chapel, and then incomers of different kinds. And these hills make anybody home, who can stick. Particularly if you stick a couple of winters, you're more or less part of it. And so the Baroque Festival fits in there, I think.
So when Rachel called me and very tentatively suggested, hey, do you know the Goldberg variations particularly well? Yes. Would you like to arrange it? And the answer was definitely yes. I couldn't wait to get started. I've done sort of bits of this kind of historical arrangement before in various settings, and so to apply it to a piece which I've known and loved for many years since I was a little boy was a real privilege.
A wonderful musician called Chad Kelly, who is a wonderful harpsichordist and director. He also composes, actually, which I didn't realise this until the other day. He really understands the language of Bach. He knows most of his music, I would say. You just have to hum a little tune of something. You say, yeah, that's BWV, something. He knows, he understands the ins and outs, and he just gets it from the inside out. And we have such a good time making music together. It's like we were speaking the same language before you even mention anything. You don't really have to rehearse, or the things that you do rehearse are on a kind of, to do with affect or kind of more general things. You don't have to kind of say, right, we need to be together at this bar, or, it's kind of on a wonderfully it's just on a different level, and that's a real joy. And so I had this idea a while ago. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I personally, just for my own sake, if I could get to play the Goldberg variations? Now, I'm not a keyboard player. I have tried. So I just fiddled around, and I tried to play them on the violin, as many voices as possible. Of course, you know, that's slightly restricted because my compass is rather smaller than a keyboard. So then I looked into various arrangements, and there was that famous one for string trio, and I thought, oh, that might be a nice thing to do in the festival. And I was just kind of mulling it over. Then I realised, actually, it needs more. We need a 16-foot here. Oh, I can hear a flute there. There's all these kind of different colours in the piece, and what can we do with that? And then Chad just popped into my head, and I thought, I know exactly the guy who's, you know, going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's right. He was in Australia at the time, where he was in lockdown. And so we had lots of kind of conference calls where we were basically going through the score and getting very excited, saying, oh yeah, this is like a concerto for violin and cello, and this one, oh no, I think this is more sarabandi, and this, you know. So we were just sharing lots of different ideas, and basically he then took over and he made an arrangement. So, and of course I'm completely in love with this arrangement.
The process evolved, like all good processes. And originally it was just going to be for string trio, and then maybe string quartet, and then one of the messages we wanted to try and communicate was the way in which individual lines and instruments interact with each other as different musical personalities, and this music lends itself very well to that. And these instruments lend itself, with all their variation and their different colours, it lends itself a wonderful sense of dialogue between both the instruments, which is reflected very much in the music. If you look at the compositional process of Bach, it goes from head to page to performer, through the instrument. There's this very often long chain of command. And sometimes when you extend this chain as sort of tentacles, including as many people, that actually gives you a very rich result, with all these different personalities shaping it in their own individual way, which I find a really rewarding type of music making.
He's really gone into lots of different structural formations that were around in the 18th century. So we might have a trio sonata, texture, so two top players, and then the bass line and the harpsichord. And then you have a kind of orchestral texture, so you have your wind players, flute and oboe and bassoon, and then strings and harpsichord. And then you also have much smaller ones. You have violin sonata, so just violin and harpsichord, so as in obbligato harpsichord. And then you also have duet, so violin and cello, or flute and oboe, or oboe and viola. So lots and lots of different combinations that would have been around and that Bach would have used in different movements for cantatas also. It starts off just as a kind of, well, an exploration of, you know, what, it's just a beautiful tune. And of course it has so many fanciful ornamentation in it. And it's as though Bach's saying, oh, I can do what you young ones are doing too. I can do that. But then on the other hand, you also have his, oh, right, I am actually going to be myself. We're going to have structure, and we're having harmony, and we have hierarchy in the bar, and we have hierarchy in the phrase. So you get these two things playing together. And I think that unfolds throughout the whole piece, the variations. And Chad has kind of used that and is showing those things with different instrumentation. So then you actually really get a feeling of it hanging together. And by the end, when we all play the aria at the same time, all together, tutti, and he's added some inner parts very, very cleverly, in canon, of course, it really feels like, as you say, a celebratory kind of conclusion to the whole thing. And it's incredibly joyful.
When I couldn't listen to anything else, read anything or think anything, Bach filled all that space, and he changed everything for me actually in a quiet way, because I realized that in poetry we talk about the white space. It's not about necessarily the black words on the page, it's about the spaces in between. And I always think of poetry as the highest of the writer's arts, and yet music, and especially Bach's music, goes somewhere beyond that, to places for which in theory we have no words. So when I was asked to follow Bach's footsteps in 1705, I approached him as a fellow young writer who was a bit wild, and he was, you know, he loved sex, he loved drink and fighting. And so I followed this ghost of this young man, and it was wonderful because so much of it is still there, and you can see him at that stage trying things out, and he knows how good he is, but will the world ever know? Will he get to practice his art? And there's this misery of, you know, having to pay the bills and be good and perform for the consistories. And yet he did it. And he obviously knew it was in him and did everything that a craftsman should do. So he went to Buxtehude. That was the point of the journey to Lubeck. And he knew this guy was a master. And he didn't want to marry his daughter, which was the price of taking over Buxtehude's operation. He was a very old man by then. Handel had been and decided not to either, and Matheson. But Bach walks back into his life with some Buxtehude manuscripts and clearly a sense of himself, of a man with a new beginning and a purpose and a possibility. And those things run all through his music, and particularly the Goldberg variations and the cello suites, which I love. They're the best of us, I think. There's so many things about the human species and the way we are which are flawed or difficult or wrong. And yet you listen to Bach and you realize those people who say we are made of stars and those people who say we have God in us, they're right too.